in transportation, I'm really happy to announce that Stanford has just launched its Sustainable Mobility Center. In fact, some of you were at our soft launch that we had about a week ago, in which we're going to be creating a community on sustainable mobility that comprises internally at Stanford, the faculty and students are working in that space, but also many of the people in industry, as well as many of the NGOs and other organizations that work in transportation. So we're very thrilled to have gotten that off and growing that community right now. And we're going to have the formal kickoff with all the bells and whistles probably in about 4 to 5 months. Yeah. No, it's not restricted to Stanford people, but given that the venue that we pick, so it's primarily going to be dependent on the venue. So if the venue is infinite, then absolutely not. If the venue is of a certain number, if the venue is of a certain number, it may be by invite only. Okay, yeah. Any other questions on that? Okay, so transportation right now is undergoing some massive changes, and it's great to see those changes happening. And as many of you know, we're actually at one of the ground zero places in the world in transportation right now. And so it's my pleasure to introduce some of the startups to come up and talk about the innovations that they're doing and where they are in that space. Okay, so we'll start off with Forum Mobility to come and talk about their work in this charging infrastructure space.
Good afternoon. Thanks for coming. My name is Leanne Din. I lead development for Forum Mobility. I lead the development and the construction team there. And Forum Mobility develops, owns, and operates electric vehicle charging infrastructure for Class 8 trucks, medium and heavy-duty trucks. We're focused primarily on the drayage market, and we are developing charging networks in and around the ports of California, Washington, and beyond. But before I talk about what Forum does, I actually want to spend a little time and talk about why. And the why is why I joined Forum and left a very comfortable job in the solar development world. And so I'll ask the audience a question. Does anybody know what drayage is? Ooh, I love it. That's better than me. I didn't know what drayage was 3 years ago. So anybody want to shout out what it is?
Essentially, short haul from a port to another point near a port.
Perfect, exactly. It's the short haul distance from a port to the first leg of distribution, which is typically a warehouse. And I call it the first mile. And that's on average upwards up to about 70 miles from the port to that warehouse. And Forum is focused on developing the charging infrastructure within that network. So we talked about drayage. What is drayage, but why is it impactful? So I want to go over the numbers a little bit. In California today, there's 28,000 trucks that visit the ports of Oakland, LA, Long Beach, and Oakland every single day. It's estimated that 40,000 trucks will be visiting those ports by 2035. And 80% of all drayage operators are small independent owner operators and or small fleets. And small fleets means they have 20 trucks or less. And they typically drive between 150 to 200 miles a day. And while semi-trucks make up only 25% of the vehicles on the road, they make up about 40% of emissions. And it's no coincidence that the pollution burden on these port cities is along these freight corridors and within these port communities. And so if you live in the Bay Area, like I do, you'll see that anywhere along a freight corridor along 880 into Stockton, which isn't shown here on the map on the left here, but the air quality is really bad. In LA, it's almost the entire LA basin, and that's sheer due to the fact of the number of trucks that travel from the port of LA, Long Beach, through these cities into San Bernardino or the Inland Empire. So if you live in a frontline community or freight corridor, the life expectancy of a resident there is anywhere between 7 and 14 years less. And most of the drayage drivers, they live in these communities. They live and work in these communities. They've chosen to become drayage drivers because they want to come home at night to their families. And so these drayage drivers, they get to bear the burden of our consumerism and allow us to enjoy 2-day shipping and everything we need at our fingertips. So in response to this, CARB passed regulation that is targeted at both OEMs and fleets. Advanced Clean Trucks was passed in 2011, and it's targeted at OEMs and requires them to sell a certain percentage of their fleet. So if they sell 1,000 diesel trucks, they have to sell 10% zero emission. And Advanced Clean Trucks required that to be 75% by 2036. Well, Advanced Clean Trucks, as recently as last week, the House voted to withdraw California's waiver, which it got for Advanced Clean Trucks. It still has to work its way through the Senate, so we don't know what will happen there. However, the truck OEMs did sign a voluntary agreement with the OEMs and CARB to stand by Advanced Clean Trucks. And so even if the waiver is withdrawn, there's still hope. There's still hope. And I would say that the OEMs have spent significant investment in manufacturing and R&D for these trucks. It's unlikely that they'll pull back now, but you don't know. Well, Advanced Clean Fleets, I don't know if anybody's tracking that, but Advanced Clean Fleets impacts fleets and requires them to retire trucks of a certain vintage and if they have a certain number of miles. And basically by 2035, no trucks can be sold in California that are not zero emission. Well, in 2025 of this year, California abandoned its waiver request, citing that it was unlikely that the Trump administration would grant that waiver. And so that one is gone. So, excuse me?
Still in effect for all California municipalities.
That's right. I'll repeat what he said for folks who didn't hear. It's still in effect for municipalities. So despite these headwinds, Forum is still committed to the decarbonization of transportation. Why? Why? It's hard. You know, headwinds, it's difficult. Nobody wants to do hard things, right? Well, it's a large market opportunity. We talked about the numbers. There's, 28,000 trucks a day, but there's 140,000 registered trucks in California. It's a $55 billion market to electrify drayage. So besides the social and environmental justice piece, the numbers are there. And like I said, OEMs have invested a lot of research. So what is Forum offering? What are we doing about this? We provide charging as a service with pull-through fast charging. We have long-term charging contracts, and our depots are open 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year with staff and security. The other product offering we have is trucking as a service. And this is aimed at approaching TCO parity, total cost of ownership parity. And this is a fixed truck payment. We help finance Class 8 trucks by stacking incentives, applying for grants, and we pair that with a charging subscription. We would not do trucking as a service without that charging subscription as well. So by our calculations, EV provides between 5 and 15% TCO savings for diesel drivers. And I think that's attributed, I think that's accurate, and it's attributed to some of the success that we've been able to convert a lot of trucking companies and fleets to zero emission despite the headwinds. So there's two types of charging depots that Forum develops. The charging behind the fence is not my ideal depot, but we've done this, especially in new markets. Our very first depot in Long Beach was a behind the fence at a single tenant's property, small fleet, less than 20 trucks, is designed to serve his needs only. It's not open to the public, but we use this as a proof of concept. And what we learned is there's some major barriers to development here. If you're a fleet or a truck operator, you want charging behind the fence. You don't want to have to change your operations. It's simple, it's easy, but it's a pretty big CapEx investment. At our Long Beach depot behind the fence, it was $635,000 to install 6 chargers. It involved, engineering and utility design and coordination. We had to make sure they had enough space to fit their chargers and continue their normal operations. We barely had enough power. It's an 800 amp panel that existed because there was a 1960 hay baler that was there that was never in use. And the biggest issue that I encountered was the trucking company didn't own the land. So if you don't own the land, what incentivizes you to put this capital investment into the charging? And so Forum stepped in and we were able to show proof of concept. And this customer, Height Logistics, went from 5 trucks in the first year to 20 trucks at the end of last year. Charging depots. This is my bread and butter. I do this every day. We're public or quasi-public, and I say quasi-public because you still are required to have a charging subscription. We don't have trucks coming off the road and charging, although we do have credit card readers at our chargers if necessary. But this allows many fleets to charge at our depots. And we get to leverage the economies of scale of having, many chargers, single bathroom, operations. It allows us to reduce cost and improve the efficiency of charging. And I think one of the biggest selling points is it helps convert CapEx into OpEx. So instead of spending $635,000 on charging infrastructure, it's now an OpEx. And of course, development expertise. This is what we do every day. It allows the drivers and the fleets to focus on what they're good at, which is driving trucks. FM Harbor is the first depot that we went live with in December of 2024. It has 44 charging spaces, 25 360 kW chargers, and a total of 9 megawatts. The 9 megawatts was already on the grid. We didn't have to wait for any upgrades from the utility. It's fully staffed. We have security 24 hours a day, restrooms, amenities, and personal vehicle parking, as well as charge management software, which is really critical. We applied for several grants, and all of the grants required us to report for up to 3 years, as well as some of the state grants that we received on this depot. What I will say about this depot is that we have bobtail only spots. Bobtail means it's a truck without a container or a chassis. We thought when we designed this that all the trucks would not have a container, or very few of them would not have a container, and we wanted to optimize a number of charging spots that could fit here. And so we squeezed 44 charging stalls in there, but after about 6 months of operations, we realized 85% of the trucks that come through the port have a container. So our future depots, we are abandoning this bobtail-only layout and putting more pull-throughs into our spots. So this is what our depot pipeline looks like today. We have 5 depots in Southern California, 1 in operations, 2 that will hopefully start construction at the end of this year, if not Q1 of next year. In Northern California, we have 1 at the Port of Oakland and 1 near the Coliseum. We also have a depot in Livermore that's in development, which is the gateway to San Joaquin Valley and the Central Valley. And finally, we're in Washington State at the Port of Seattle and the Port of Tacoma. And I'll end with this. I got my 1-minute warning. We're looking to expand where there's TCO readiness. That means I'm looking at total grants. Do they have LCFS? Is there a policy? I'm looking at the purple states. I'm looking at the blue states. But I'm also looking at Texas. And that's because there's a very low cost of land and power. And I think in Texas, these depots can stand without the incentives. And that's kind of the future that we're looking at. Questions? Okay.
I'm curious about the charging standard, like the hardware, the connector standard. Is that something that you've had to struggle with? Have you settled on something?
Yeah, this is a really timely question. I think we have 360 kW chargers at Harbor. Everybody is moving towards the MCS charger. And because we got certain grants at Harbor, we're limited in, we can't upgrade them at this point until those MCS chargers have been approved and tested. I think that will happen next year. So our Port of Oakland depot and our other Southern California depot will have MCS chargers. And I think that there's a few OEMs that make chargers that can charge different types of trucks. Tesla has one. I don't know if people are familiar with what Tesla has, but only the, so we have to keep that in mind as we're designing them as well. So we're working with all the different OEMs on different chargers, but it's up to the MCS standard.
Other questions?
Just a question on the TCO. You said you have a 5% to 15% TCO savings. Could you unpack that a bit? I mean, not too much in detail, but just a little bit, just to understand where that comes from.
Yeah, I think with a zero-emission vehicle, you don't have as much maintenance cost. We also buy a gold standard warranty that comes with those trucks. And so under that warranty, it covers almost everything except for the tires. And so as a result of that, they don't have to change oil or fluids or any of the other things. Their main expense is actually tires. Yep.
So what's, are those numbers similar to what you guys are thinking, or?
Slightly different, but that's why I asked the question. I'll
Right.
reach out to you, we can discuss. But
Sure.
We are seeing different TCO numbers.
Okay.
Yeah, the customers find really hard to figure out the item out, the break, out of charge, load, it's just, yeah.
Yeah, and I think it's an operational shift for them too. It's not just how you drive, but when you drive. So that's a part of the TCO calculation that we do as well.
But it's great to see that companies are actually calculating TCO and then they're getting validated and verified. That's a great development.
I think there was one more question.
Well, I just was curious how you structured your contracts and so forth, and how you decided on which attributes and features to offer and at what scale and that kind of thing.
Yeah, our charging contracts are long-term, as well as our truck leases are 5 years or more. We've worked actually really hard the last couple of years to kind of figure out what that truck leasing price is going to be, because there's no residual value given to these trucks. And so the truck leasing price was very high. We've worked with industry and try to figure that out. But our charging services agreement are a minimum of 3 years, up to 5 years. And if you sign up a charging contract for longer, we have different rates. I can talk to you a little bit more about that, but it depends. I will say, though, at our Port of Long Beach site, most of our fleets are small, and they're afraid to commit to a 5-year charging contract. So we are exploring shorter-term 6-month contracts in anticipation of future depots going online, and they would then shift to those depots. So we're trying to get creative. We just need people to charge.
Yeah, actually, I had a question along those lines. So as a person with an EV, are your charge rates similar to the charging stations for the light duty?
So there is an EV rate that we have as a pass-through to our customers. And then the way our structure is there's a flat minimum kilowatt hour usage, and anything above that, we charge them for.
Fantastic. Any other questions? Okay.
Thank you.
Well, I have one more.
Oh.
You have one more. So one of the things that I hear routinely is one of the challenges is the permitting. And if you were to say you site a new location, from the point where you get that site to when it's operational, how long is that for you?
So California passed regulation AB 970 and AB 1236 and 970 read together. That was supposed to require all cities in California to have a streamlined permitting process of 60 days. I'm sure some of you realize that doesn't happen. My first 3 years at Forum was spent traveling in California, educating these municipalities, because the problem is, even with the expedited permitting process, EV charging doesn't exist in their general plan, and so they don't know how to permit it. So even with the mandate, the regulation, there's no teeth to that. And so It depends, is my answer. It depends if the city is open to it. If, most of the cities where there's warehousing or heavy freight, they want it. They want zero emission because it impacts their community. But that doesn't mean that it's fast. Our Port of Long Beach Depot, we signed our lease in June of '23, started construction in May of '24. So it wasn't that long. We had to go through the port development permit as well as the city of Long Beach. So it wasn't that long, but I would highly recommend anyone who's developing to do some legwork in the beginning before you find a site, to talk to that municipality and explain to them what you're doing, because you're gonna get comments from fire, you're gonna get comments from all the different departments, and everybody's gonna have an opinion, and so it's really important to educate what you're building.
Yeah, so you're restating that we're not really ready to do this prime time yet with our permitting infrastructure process.
Right.
It's still kind of kludged together.
Exactly, and we have to just explain to them. I mean, the number one question in opposition I get is fire. It's like, what happens if there's a fire at your depot? And honestly, the answer is, you gotta let it burn. So, yeah, I know, it's hard.
Okay, so next up, John with Harbinger.
My name's John Harris. I'm the CEO and co-founder of Harbinger Motors. We're a company that's redefining medium-duty vehicle manufacturing. We've taken a very different approach to this segment. Many of you are probably, I think, transportation experts, and you might have observed over the last decade or so that transportation has been on a very similar trend to defense manufacturing. We've had essentially a decomposition of engineering competency, manufacturing competency, kind of overall capability of execution from what we would think of as an OEM or a prime, and it's just been sort of dissolved downwards into the supply chain. And that's resulted in price increases that rapidly outpace inflation. It's resulted in supply chain inflexibility. It's resulted in longer development cycles. You know, a lot of these things that are sort of the recurring negative theme in defense have now come for transportation as well. And it's really for the same reason, which is that at the OEM level, companies simply no longer have the ability to build this content. So at Harbinger, we're doing the opposite. We build everything in our vehicles here in the US. We're entirely vertically integrated, and we have onshore manufacturing today of complete vehicles as well as almost all complete components. This is something that's only been done a few times. These are some other companies we kind of look to for inspiration there, as well as companies that many of us at Harbinger were involved in building. So we're building chassis in medium duty. The sort of skateboard platform is referred to typically as a stripped chassis or a cab chassis. This is Harbinger's chassis production line, where we're building about 4 chassis a day right now. We're doing that on a single shift, so our factory as it currently sits is capacitized for 2,000 vehicles a year. Now, building chassis is nice, but again, it doesn't help if everything inside the chassis comes with a dependency on larger companies. So at Harbinger, we're also winding our own electric motors from commodity materials. So we are a commodity buyer of copper. We are building battery modules and battery packs from cells. We are a commodity buyer of cells. We are building suspension systems, steering systems, low voltage distribution systems. In all cases, we are either a buyer of a true commodity, something that's indexed on the LME, or we are a company that's buying from a build-to-print supplier. So we never buy anything to a spec. We don't go to Bosch and say, hey, we'd like some brakes. We go to one of Akebono's Tier 2s and we say, we'd like a piece of metal shaped like this. And we own the drawing, we own the tools, we own the validation, we own the IP. And the result of that is we've managed to pull all of that content up into the OEM level and really beat the pricing curve in the process.
Where is your manufacturing location?
This is in Orange County, California. So we're doing all of these things here in California, entirely onshore. So we're doing this all in support of, I think, a pretty obvious goal, which is commercial electrification. But the part that to me is really non-obvious is here's China up at the top, obviously, like miles out in front of everyone on electrification. But how often do you see a technology area where the US is woefully behind Europe, right? Western Europe, maybe not the home of innovation in most cases, but a decade out in front of the US right now in this area. And this is the specific segment in which we're focused. Medium-duty vehicles. These are vehicles that are built with body-on-frame construction, so they are still built with a distinct structural ladder frame plus a separate upfit. And this is in a lot of contrast, in particular to this category over here, unibody vans. So this is how all light-duty vehicles are built pretty much worldwide today. But a lot of the larger OEMs who've made big investments in building, in particular, electric pickups and electric SUVs, have been able to repurpose all of that IP to build light-duty unibody vans. So e-Sprinter, e-Transit, e-ProMaster, BrightDrop, Rivian delivery vehicle, all of these things are Class 2 delivery vans that are essentially a reuse of Class 1 EV pickup technology. Now, crucially, we're doing this at a point where the economics actually make sense. Now, at Harbinger, we don't believe in a green premium. We just believe that that's sort of a passing thing that exists today and might not exist tomorrow. We also don't believe in TCO parity. TCO parity is to me a crutch that you bring out when your pricing is simply wrong. The right price for an electric vehicle is just the right price for a vehicle in that category. It's easy to figure out what the right price is because we can simply call Freightliner and ask what the diesel trucks cost in our segment. That is by definition the right price for the vehicle. You won't hear any other OEM talk about that because most people are at something like a 250% premium to diesel. At Harbinger, we are selling electric trucks at price parity to diesel with positive contribution margins. So it's crucial that you don't have to introduce WeWork economics as part of this. Today, from SOP. So today, the way that we do this is radically different than how other OEMs are doing it. We're building battery packs here, we're building drivetrain systems here, we're sourcing many of the input materials even onshore, like the steel in our electric motors is made in Tennessee. So we're even taking raw commodities from onshore. And I think right now the political discourse is mostly about how much of a premium can people afford to pay to manufacture things in the US. We view this as the opposite. We've used onshore manufacturing to actually drive cost savings. So in-house today, this is our stator winding line. We have the capacity to make 16,000 stators per year. We're using a hairpin forming line. So in addition to building these systems at the lowest price of anyone in the industry, our stators have 5 times higher energy density in terms of kilowatts per kilogram. They have a diameter that is less than 50% of the industry standard. Our overall drivetrain system is almost 20% more efficient than the industry standard. So what we've done is leverage vertical integration to really break the iron triangle in all places. For most of our systems, we've achieved greater than 30 to 40% cost savings and performance improvement and weight reduction simultaneously. A lot of that comes down to this industry. If we look at the passenger car space, the idea that you could beat something like a VW Golf or a Toyota Camry by 30 or 40%, I think is sort of delusional because these vehicles are just so good today. And that's why it's so challenging for companies like Tesla and Rivian to build something that's an order of magnitude better than its ICE competition. But that's not about Tesla and Rivian not being capable of building incredible products. It's more a reflection of just how good the legacy products are in that segment. In the medium duty segment, we're fortunate to have the opposite situation. The vehicles in this segment are so bad. In many cases, they were designed in the 1960s or 1970s, and they've had zero technology improvement since then. So you'll probably be shocked to learn that every vehicle heavier than 16,000 pounds in the United States has a leaf spring front suspension and a solid front steer axle. And that was technology that stopped being competitive in passenger cars around 1945. So one of the technology areas we've pulled in at Harbinger is we've moved to the radical technology innovation of a double wishbone suspension. brand new in France in 1930. But in this segment, this looks like technology from space. And so the result is that the front suspension is 50% lighter, radically more comfortable, radically cheaper. And we've also enabled a turning circle that's almost half the size of a Sprinter. So we've done that primarily by bringing in the right people. So the company's fortunate to have backers with enormous expertise in this area, both at the strategic level, where we're backed by some of the largest customers in the segment. Many of our investors themselves are backed by industry-leading LPs, and many of our investors have a good track record in industrial innovation in particular. We also have to have the right team. I spent the last few years at Anduril building their flagship product. My co-founder and our head of production have similarly spent their careers focused in this area. That carries on across our overall leadership team. And that's sort of what we brought all together, the right integration of manufacturing, the right IP ownership, the right team, to deliver the first vehicle in this segment built from a clean slate in something like 40 years. So I'll stop for questions.
John, we talked at lunch. As far as the first production vehicle, when do you see that coming to the market, and kind of what your ramp looks like, and then how that plays into the supply chain and the manufacturing?
We produced and shipped our first production vehicles the last week of December last year. We built over 100 vehicles in Q1 of this year alone.
You talked about building the chassis. What about the rest of the vehicle? Is that your production, or is that with partners?
So we only build chassis. We build the high volume, low mix part of the vehicle. We very intentionally do not touch the upfitting side. Within upfitting, every vehicle is a unique snowflake. More importantly, though, it's not differentiated by electrification. If we look at something like an R1T, what we realized is that only about 15% of the dollar value is actually differentiated by electrification. That means 85% of the investor dollars are being used to compete with Ford on F-150s, which is a losing battle. By only building chassis, we have found that between 80 and 85% of our dollar content is actually differentiated for electrification. So it gives us the ability, even today at SOP, to pretty wildly outcompete the legacy truck companies, because they still think that the vehicle is the metal parts and the electrical stuff you get from suppliers.
What is the most challenging topic these days, or ahead for this year for you?
Demand volatility because of extremely unpredictable macro.
That was my second question.
Yep. Yep, no question. I mean, I think Freightliner is off by something like 50% on volume in Q1. And that's not electric trucks, that's just trucks.
Really impressive. Can you say a little bit about your marketing strategy?
Not very effectively at the moment. Honest answer.
Well, I think places like this is part of the reason why I'm inviting John here to get the word out. I think it's an exclamation point on the fact that can electric vehicles be competitive? The answer is absolutely. Okay, and he's manufacturing in California. Okay, and so we talked about this, right? It goes contrary to what people say all the time when I hear, oh, it's going to be more expensive. And they're never manufacturing in California. And I always say, talk to John.
And the idea that you can't make an EV competitive is just down to the defeatism. Like, an electric vehicle has 2 orders of magnitude less moving parts. It has dramatically less complexity. The vehicle fundamentally should be 30 to 40% cheaper than an ICE product.
What is your capacity? I mean, and then also path to profitability. Is it already there, or it's coming in the next few years?
So the capacity right now is 2,000 units per year. We'll probably double that again in Q4.
Same facility?
Same facility. The current facility will top out between 5,000 and 6,000 units per year. We have an ASP of about $100,000, so the revenue capacity of that facility is pretty easy to figure out. And that's matched by all the components. So right now we're making 6 to 8 drivetrain systems per day. We're making about 1 megawatt hour battery packs per day. And then all of that feeds into our chassis. Sorry, was there a second half of your question?
Yes. Path to profitability, when is the-
Next year.
Next year?
Yep.
I definitely agree with the arguments. It all makes sense, but I'm curious what your view is on the Tesla Semi. Obviously, it's a Class 8, but are they doing things right, or how do you differentiate there? Is it just you're in a different market?
The problem with the Tesla Semi, the Tesla Semi is not a product that Tesla actually wants to sell you. Like the Tesla is entirely capable of building that product. They were entirely capable of building it 5 years ago. But they have to choose to do that. And right now they choose to build, Cybertrucks and Cybercabs. So my guess is that factory will be perpetually under construction, getting bigger. But we built more chassis in Q1 than Tesla has built semis since they announced the product. And it's not like a close difference either. But that's just a choice. That's not a limitation that they're facing.
So the strategy of building motors and batteries in-house that's
Oh, of course. I mean, I used to think that their choice to build a casting plant in Lathrop was completely insane. And now we're thinking about it. And then I think there's one more.
What's your commercialization strategy?
So we built 3 generations of products pre-commercialization, but we're post-commercialization.
I'm saying in terms of distribution channels, are you going?
Got it.
Yeah, you go through partnerships.
So we sell to 3 different types of customers. We sell to certain large national fleets directly, companies like Bimbo Bakeries, companies like Thor Industries, Coca-Cola. So the largest fleets typically will buy chassis and then pay for upfits in separate transactions, but that's fairly rare. There's maybe 20 fleets in the US that do that. Long term, the majority of our volume will go through dealers. Probably 80% of medium-duty vehicles are sold that way because the market is dominated by small to mid-sized fleets. So we're building a dealer network. We have, I think, about 25 locations in our dealer network so far. Partially that's by piggybacking on larger OEMs. So we have Freightliner dealers that are in our network now. We also have a couple dealers that are sort of EV-only dealers. And then we have sales to upfitters directly. It's probably the smallest category by sort of number of customers, but it ends up being quite significant because the RV industry is hyper-concentrated. One of our large investors and customers is Thor Industries, and they own essentially the entire RV industry. So we sell to them directly. They buy more chassis in a typical year than UPS and FedEx put together.
The question on charging, how do you guys link up with charging companies and what's that model?
So we're standards compliant. We have a combo port on the vehicle for J1772 and CCS1. For the most part, we try not to get involved in charging. We'll refer customers to charging partners that we're comfortable with. We work with Inspiration Mobility, for example. But our vehicles are overwhelmingly used in single shift routes. It's one of the things that makes medium duty so well suited to electrification. If you're in a single shift route, overwhelmingly you can charge these vehicles on a 10 to 12 kilowatt charger because you've got a 12-hour charge window. It's returned to depot. It's behind the fence. So the challenges around high-speed charging, we are for the most part shielded from by the customer's operational restrictions, which for the most part have nothing to do with vehicles. It's just about their own customers' expectations. Well, thanks, everyone.
Thank you. Thank you. So I would like to say, if you are in a mood for a field trip, he's in Orange County. It's a fantastic tour. And I also am very excited for the fact that, you hear that electrification should result in cheaper vehicles. At least, but but yet we don't really see that, and you're just looking in the wrong places. Yes. And just as a reminder, we are going to have, after the showcase, for the starters, we'll be having a table. So if you have other questions, feel free to mob John after. Okay, and then it's my pleasure to move to Stephen.
Great. Good afternoon. My name is Stefan Heck. I'm the CEO and founder of Nauto. I'm here to leave you with three things. First of all, a little bit of lessons about driving. Secondly, show you what we do at Nauto to transform driving. And third, blow your mind about just how much safer driving can be. So hopefully you'll take something away, at least from the first part, of what you can apply immediately as you drive home. So first of all, you may not realize, but your number one risk that you all take every day is driving, except if you're younger than 1 year old or you're starting to get over 60. Younger than 1 year old is infectious diseases. Older than 60 is the famous lifestyle diseases, cancer, heart disease. But for most of us in the room, this is your biggest risk every day. Now, why? Anybody have a guess? What makes it so dangerous? Nobody? We do a lot of it. Yeah, that may be true. That's probably more true for some than others. But what is it that causes the risk?
Distraction.
Distraction, that's right. It's this guy that you all have in your pocket. So if you want to walk out now, you can say, okay, just don't use your phone. That's it. That's the gist of the talk. But I'll tell you a little bit more. Driving is also a macro problem for us as a society, right? In California here, it's 50% of our greenhouse gas emissions. So it is the number one driver of climate change. That's true for most advanced industrialized countries. It's even more so here in California. It's also a giant consumer of land. 20 to 25% of most urban centers is parking. Your vehicle asset utilization, anybody have a guess? Anybody read Emory Lovins in the 70s? Sorry? Below 10% for sure, but it's lower than that. 7? No, lower still. It's about 2%. So for most of you, unless you've bought a yacht or a home or a second home or an airplane or something, your car is going to be either your biggest purchase or your second biggest purchase. Now think about what a bad investor you were that your second biggest purchase has 2% asset utilization. Right? If you were running a company and you bought something you utilized 2% of the time and you didn't outsource that, you'd get fired. And yet, we all do that. So, second form of insanity. It's also responsible for a huge amount of wasted time, wasted fuel, massive amounts of congestion. Most congestion is caused by collisions, so I will actually show you that as well, that we can reduce that. Third thing that you may not have thought through is the bigger opportunity is actually AI for vehicles for safety, not AVs, even though AVs are getting probably 90% of the buzz. What's interesting here is most people have missed the fact that for many, many vehicles, the driver in that vehicle is something other than just a driver, right? If you're doing long-haul trucking, sure, that's just the driver, and you can still debate maybe they're responsible for signature, loading, security. But for most of our fleets that we're working with, it's a technician, it's a salesperson, even the courier, right? They have to be there for that last 20 feet to get the package to your doorstep, right? All the experience with drones and robots haven't really worked out. Even Amazon backed off from those. So that human being's going to be there. That radically changes the economics because, yes, you can give the $160,000 a year utility lineman a $300,000 autonomous pickup truck, but your economics as a utility aren't getting better. They're getting worse, right? You're saving zero on labor, and that's true for most companies.
I just want to make sure your video plays.
Oh, okay.
So just give me 1 second.
All right. Well, my next slide, which you can't see yet, is actually an analysis across all the thousands of deployments we've done across North America, Japan, Europe, Latin America, of what drives risk. You already gave the answer. The number one risk is distraction, but I'll show you a little bit of the rest. It's really all different forms of inattention. If you are talking to a passenger, if you're smoking, your hand is occupied, your brain may be occupied. All those things are the top risks, and most safety systems today are really all focused outward. And it's been known for about 60 years that 96% of all collisions are human error. So why the heck are we focusing all our safety systems on the outside rather than on the inside? And I'll show you that even that's wrong because really, is there still a challenge? Okay.
Just give me 1 second.
All right. The real reason for crashes isn't one thing. So if anybody have a fancy, nice car, Audi, BMW, Cadillac, anybody? Yeah? Do you have advanced safety systems in your car?
It's level 1.
Level 1, yeah. Do you use them or do you turn them off? Yeah, absolutely. Okay. So the data shows that over 50% of people who have lane departure warning turn it off. Why? Because it's annoying. It buzzes all the time. Yeah, I see a few head nods in the car. Yeah. The reason for that is it's over-alerting. It's alerting you every time you change lanes, whether it's dangerous to change lanes or not, whether you intended to change lanes or not, right? So those systems today look at a single factor. How close are you to the vehicle in front? Have you fallen asleep? Have you crossed the lane? That is not the right way to think about risk. The right way to think about risk is the entire situation inside and around that will actually show you, are you about to have a crash? So I'll give you a very, very simple example, right? What if I do this? How much has my risk gone up? Anybody have a guess? 50%, yeah? So the answer turns out to be 7 times, so 700%. Now if I start texting, how much worse does that make it? So texting turns out to be 23 times riskier than normal driving. So please don't text when you go home tonight. So 2,300%, right? Now what about a pedestrian crossing in front of me? Also pretty bad, right? Anybody? There's a lot of pedestrians here on campus. 9 times riskier. But here's the real problem, and we're going to have to jump back ahead to that slide. Yeah, there we go. When you combine that, so there's a pedestrian crossing and you're looking down at your phone, they don't add, the risk explodes. You're now talking about 2,700 times normal driving risk. Now, you may believe you're a great driver, or you may believe you have a guardian angel with you. I don't care. You're never going to survive those odds, right? You can't be 2,700 times riskier than normal driving and live to see the next month. You can maybe live to see the next day. So a lot of what we do is try and figure out where are these risks and actually let the minor things go. Because empirically we found if I alert you more than once every 2 hours, what's that called? Backseat driving. All of you hate it, right? So I can't keep alerting you for everything I see, even though we see lots and lots of risks of people driving. But I want to actually get you for the things on the right. I'm going to tell you just a touch about what we do. We put a sensor system into the vehicle. So it's computer vision, lots of AI running on the edge, different individual neural networks that classify objects, risks, distances. But then importantly, we fuse that into a situation assessment. And for a family or a fleet, we have a whole analytics suite so you can see where all your vehicles are, what risks are being taken. But I want to get to this part. Thank you for getting this working, Maggie. Hopefully it'll work. These are all real examples. Is there a way to make it louder?
Collision warning.
So you can see he was texting, distracted, got feedback, looked up briefly. And, noticed that he almost collided with the vehicle in front. So you had 2 risks there, right? He was distracted and the lead vehicle was braking. And you can see his gratitude, right? That sheepish, I know, my bad. So we know, if we get the thumb, we know it's worked well. If we get the middle finger, we know we over-alerted, right? So it's a very simple feedback mechanism. This you should not do while you're driving, only in bed, please. This is a much, much harder phenomenon because there's many things going on. You're having to watch over time. Is he drifting, as you can see there on the right-hand side? What's he doing on the inside? Is he shrugging his shoulders, scratching? And we do a time series model to understand, is there enough factors accumulated that this driver is likely starting to fall asleep? Because any one of those things you do as a normal human being all the time, right? We blink. We might rub our eyes because we have allergies. We might fidget for some other reason.
Drowsy. Take a break.
Last thing you see here is we always give positive prescriptions because it turns out drivers change their behavior 20% more if you tell them what to do as opposed to reminding them what they shouldn't be doing. So remember that for your kids if you have any. Tell them what they should do. And last one, challenge for you. Can you detect the pedestrian risk before the AI does? I'll give you one freebie. The pedestrian on the sidewalk you can ignore because that's how it should be, right? They're safe. But see if you can spot the pedestrian before the system does. Shout out, anybody.
Pedestrian.
So if you look closely, the door opens, the foot emerges, boom. Now, if you have the alert, super easy to avert, right? What's the solution? Move 2 feet to the left, pass by easily. If there's even a moment of inattention or you didn't realize the person was there, that's a very serious hospitalization, maybe a fatality, and you've totaled the other vehicle, given the impact that would have been there. So that's what we do in practice. I want to show you the analytical results. Actually, I think there's one more video, but I'll skip this one. These are the results, and this is why I said I will amaze you how much you can change human behavior. We did not know this when I started Nauto 10 years ago. We are literally running 3 weeks of baseline. We put a piece of plastic in your car that doesn't do anything. It's just measuring and observing the baseline. We know for about 2 weeks, if I stick a plastic junk box in your car, you'll be a better driver by about 15%. It's like placebo effect, it's called Hawthorne effect, right? You know you're being measured, so you're on your best behavior. Empirically, we found people go back to their normal habits by week 3. Why is it exactly week 3? I have no idea. But for 2 weeks, we're sort of, I guess this is New Year's resolutions, right? They last through January, and then they're done. So week 3 is the real risk. This is actually a pretty good fleet, 5 distractions per moving hour. It turns out across all the deployments we've done, commercial drivers who are twice as good as consumers are on average looking at their phone 7 times per moving hour, every 9 minutes. And if you look at consumer drivers, you see them on Netflix, you see them reading books, you see them doing makeup. It's all crazy. So please don't do any of that. On Sunday night, we turn on the feedback that you just saw. It's all in the vehicle. That doesn't have to be recording. Obviously, in the examples I showed, we did record just for training purposes, but you can run the whole system with complete privacy, just the driver's getting feedback. And you can see within 72 hours, 85% of drivers become great drivers. They self-correct. What's the secret? The secret is we have to create moments like this one. I'll back up to this video. All right, good old manual way. Driver's being coached. He ignores it.
Pull over to use phone.
Still ignores it.
Collision warning.
Why is this driver going to put his phone down after this? We have a very highly technical term for it. We improve drivers by creating oh shit experiences. This is where drivers learn, and this is why they change behavior. So if you thought it was not possible to change driver behavior, people always have these debates with me and go, do I need to pay them more? Do I need to punish them? No. You just need to show them that they would have nearly died, and that's good enough, right? So if I'm accurate and I'm timely and I show you a risk that you can recognize, which, by the way, is very important. Tailgating is a hard thing to get people to stop doing because most people don't recognize they're tailgating. Having a near collision, obviously, is much easier. And then we work with the fleet over the next couple weeks to address the remaining tail of drivers. That's usually 5% of the drivers that have other issues. Some of them need glasses. Some of them have sleep problems, things that you can't necessarily just fix through feedback. The results are stunning. So this translates the behavior change you just saw into economics, 80% fewer fatalities. You can see the risk drop dramatically. Fascinating. These are your total collisions. These are your at-fault collisions. Notice that third-party fault collisions go down dramatically too. So if you think there's all jerks and crazy drivers out there, that's true, but you can do something about it, right? If you're an attentive driver, you can correct for most of the other people's mistakes. The only one we haven't figured out how you can correct for is you're stopped at a red light and the person behind you is using their mobile phone, because they will rear-end you and there's nothing you can do in that scenario. So if anybody has an idea for that, please come see me. We have a job for that. The end result, this is pretty cool. I was really excited when what you're doing in your technology and your startup shows up in government data. This is U.S. Department of Transportation data, not our own data. These are police-reported collisions. These are only the most severe incidents that fleets have. So this is somebody died, somebody was hospitalized, or a vehicle was towed away. These are literally the tip of the iceberg in terms of damage. And you can see our deployment into FedEx over that time frame and the reduction you got versus all of the other fleets that some of them actually adopted other technologies, but they don't work. So that's it. I'll turn it over to questions.
Just a quick one, I'm sure is built in speeding.
Yeah. We do detect speeding as well. Speeding is dramatically overrated as a cause of risk. If you look at all of our federal regulation, it's focused on 2 things: hours of service for commercial vehicles and speeding. It turns out that speeding is what the police officer puts down when they don't know what caused the crash. And so speeding is overreported. Guess what's underreported? What doesn't show up in the police report is that you were using your phone, Because even a great cop will show up 3 minutes later, by which time your phone is back in your pocket, guess. So what we see is, as you saw in the chart earlier, that speeding actually is a cause of collisions only a tiny % of the time. Now, speeding does have a second role. The damage that you do will go up dramatically with the speed you're driving at, right? So you may crash because you're distracted, but crashing at 60 miles per hour versus crashing at 25 is hugely different, and the outcomes are different. Yeah?
Quick question, what is your business model? As I understand, it's
Yeah.
working with fleets or product roadmap, is it, working also with the OEMs?
So we started working with fleets directly. It's a subscription model. It's about $400 per vehicle per year. Great return for the customer because usually they're saving about $2,500 per vehicle per year. So you get payback in just a couple months. We're now working on integrating this with insurance products. So you may get it for free from your insurance company, subsidized by the premium you pay. And both you and the insurer win because you avoid the collisions. The insurer avoids all the extreme payouts. And then we are working on integrating it into production vehicles. The one that John showed earlier, BrightDrop, actually we were integrated with already. Unfortunately, BrightDrop hasn't sold a lot of vehicles, but so there's more coming. It'll come to consumer vehicles eventually through that OEM path, so it'll just be built in. We found that it's really hard to get consumers to retrofit a piece of hardware. And a lot of people don't want a box sitting on their windshield separately. They like their sort of pristine car. So it'll all be just AI built into the vehicle. But it'll be a couple more years before that comes out. Yeah. Yes?
I'm curious, when you show that chart with the different delivery services, do the other delivery services, have they come running to you, or where are you on the impact scale?
Yeah, I probably can't say that on the record, but we are in pilot with a second one of those after they saw the chart. And we keep having debates with the third one. I'm not convinced they really care about safety. I'm not going to name who, but one of those delivery companies really doesn't care enough about safety, so they haven't switched from the system they have today. So the last one has a union issue blocking any kind of AI deployment right now. So we'll see if that eventually changes. We have convinced unions to adopt this technology because it is guaranteeing privacy while bringing you home safely to your family. So it's actually a very employee-friendly proposition. But they put in a ban on all AI technologies, which unfortunately I think we'll see more, but really depends on how you're using the AI, in my view, not the fact that it's AI. Yeah, please.
Do you keep the data? Like, is it constantly recording and it saves for a week, a month, or is it just gone after?
So we only upload data that has unusual or interesting behavior, right? Either a high-risk situation or the driver manually did something that was unexpected. We learn from both the best drivers. Our best drivers have driven for 45 years without having a collision. These are commercial drivers that are driving 10 hours a day. So you can imagine how much better they are than any of us here in the room. Incredible, incredible drivers. Our worst drivers, we don't see the worst driver out there today. That's a teenage male who will have 14 collisions this year. We don't have those in our commercial fleets. Yes, yes, watch out if you have sons. But the worst drivers we see are ride-sharing and taxi drivers who have 3 collisions per year, which is still better. The average for all of us in the room would be roughly 1 collision every 10 years, half of which are your fault, half of which are somebody else's fault. So we learn from the worst and the best examples. We can buffer on the device so that you can go back and investigate something. So you can, for example, have a driving complaint. You've all seen that 1-800 number, how's my driving? Well, with our solution, you can go back and say what happened 3 days ago. But it's configurable how much that saves. In Europe, we don't store any historical data to ensure 100% privacy. In the US, we offer a couple days. Typically, it's 4 or 5 days going back. That's long enough for the fleet to investigate something that's happened, and then it's all overwritten. But really, the only data we upload proactively is when there's some kind of unusual driving event. And then any data we use for AI training, we completely depersonalize. So we don't know what fleet it's from. We don't know exactly where it happened. We know the relative movements, of course, and we know what the vehicle dynamics were, but we don't care about who was driving. And that's to protect everybody involved, right? A lot of the events we have are multi-million-dollar liability events, so you don't want those actually associated with a person or a company.
Okay.
All right.
Please, we have to move on, but Stefan will be available at the reception.
I won't actually, but feel free to email me. Just Stefan at Nauto.
Yes, okay, thank you, Stefan. Okay. Okay, so our last presenter, we're in for a treat, is one of our Stanford students that has come up with a new way of doing magnetic materials. So please join me in welcoming Sumar.
Hello, everyone. My name is Suman Kumar. I was a student a few weeks ago. I just graduated. Thank you. And here at Stanford, I was a part of a GU research group. And this technology that I'll be talking about is from our lab. But a bit of disclaimer. When I was doing the customer discovery, I also found out a few other interests from the transformers, but also power electronics industries as well. So I'll also be inputting them. The problem. So any device that translates mechanical energy to electrical energy, you need magnets. For example, in EVs, you can think of it, if you're driving from point A to point B, there's the average loss, depending on the speed that you're driving, it ranges from 10% to 25%. And those losses are mainly due to core losses. And the solution that we came up with at our lab was soft magnetic materials. So we basically use additive manufacturing to build these soft magnetic materials into topology optimized shapes and structures. We call them Hilbert structures that significantly reduce these core losses by almost 10 times. If you look at the materials that are used by magnets in the industries, we fall in the amorphous steel side for high frequency applications with higher resistivity. So the use cases of these are also motors, which is what we were interested in. The reason we got interested in motors was when I was doing customer discovery interviews with EVs, one of the big concerns, one of the big areas that they were looking at was reduction of their weight. So when you have much more energy efficient motors, there's the translation from electrical energy from the battery stored to mechanical energy is because of the losses, it's higher, which helps them increase the range of the vehicle, and that gives the EVs flexibility to also reduce the weight of their entire vehicle. And it turns out the batteries are one of the biggest weighing components of the vehicles. So this was the biggest reasons why EVs were interested in our work. So in terms of the traction, we got ARPA-E grant of $1.9 million by Department of Energy. They wanted us to commercialize our technology. In terms of industry engagement, we did have industry validation from General Motors. We also had a bit of chat with Hyundai, Volkswagen. But also on the power electronics side, we also had a meeting with Schneider Electric. We had a meeting with Global Director of Engineering, but also the CTO of the US. As of right now, we are looking to pilot our magnets technology in their devices, but this is more on the power converter side. But mainly the biggest traction that we had was with the General Motors, where we are sending our magnets to their facilities and just verifying our technical findings with the integrated motors that they use for their products. So in terms of the market opportunity, EV market, $823 billion by 2030, it's increasing. But I've also mentioned power transformers here, power electronics here. In terms of our business model, initially we are planning to direct our manufacturing and sales to OEMs, especially EVs, power electronics, transformers. So it will mostly be B2B. In second phase, we're also looking at licensing our proprietary fabrication process and IPs. We have 4. I should say 4.5 because another patent is on our way. Pricing target, the current pricing, the pricing is for the raw materials that we use. We get it for $7.50 per kilograms. This is quite high, mainly because the restriction that we have with Department of Energy, they require us to have our suppliers based in the US. So if we were to get it from Japan, would be a lot cheaper. But if we are doing mass manufacturing, getting our magnets or producing them at scale, it would be around $300 per kilograms. So yeah, these are some of the metrics that I have in comparison with some of the other magnets that are used and some of the other companies. The biggest upper hand that we have is labor cost, mainly because we use additive manufacturing. It reduces significantly the labor cost. You don't need laborers as you would for the other production of other mass manufacturing components. Also modularity and because we fabricate our magnets using additive manufacturing, you can customize them into shapes. It can be in a centimeter scale to a bigger scale. You just need to get a bigger additive manufacturing 3D printer. So executive team members, as of right now, it's Professor Wendy Gu and me, but we also have 1 postdoc, 2 PhD students, and 1 engineering student, undergrad, working on this project. I'm looking to expand our team members. In terms of our milestones, we have completed our prototype in the lab scale here. Initial customer discovery, we've had the biggest traction we've had was General Motors and Schneider Electric, actively working with them. We were awarded ARPA-E grant that I talked about. And in next 12 months, so we printed our magnets in 2 millimeter scale. We want to scale it up to 10 centimeter scale, depending on the use cases of or the asks of our customers or the folks that we are trying to pilot with. So yeah, we're looking to secure the pilot agreements. We're also finalizing licensing agreement and terms with Stanford OTL. Very important because Stanford owns all of those patents. And we are looking to raise our seed round for the scaling up our technology. So thank you. No questions.
I have one.
Okay.
So you're showing the price for the raw materials. So if you were to use that as a baseline against what the current price in the market is, do you know what that is? It depends on the use cases. So for transformers, it would be lower, mainly because the price of transformers goes up because the type of manufacturing that they use, it just increases the labor cost. For EVs, it's comparable. Any other questions? Well, then let's give Joan a round of applause for